Today we've got a crazy revenge story about someone who tried to get a team member fired and subsequently got deported. We'll get into that story in just a bit, but first, petty revenge on girls that bullied me. Heads up, this is a long story. I went to a pretty small private high school with a bunch of relatively wealthy kids. I was a part of a very small group of lower-income scholarship kids on campus. Aside from being one of the only girls without designer clothes, makeup, shoes, etc., I was also a bit weird, self-conscious, and awkward. But heck, who isn't at that age? For the first 3 years of high school, I had been a part of a small, close-knit group of friends who I had been really close with. Kevin, Derek, Mark, Danny, and Kate. However, at the start of my senior year, my small group merged with a larger, much more popular gang of friends, because two of the guys in my friend circle began dating two girls in theirs. In the beginning, I didn't mind the change in social scenery. I met new people and made a bunch of new mates. However, as time went on, I noticed that my old female BFFs got really close with the 15-plus band of popular girls that were a part of the newly blended friend group, and began casually excluding me from their daily excursions off campus and occasional weekend hangout sessions. I initially was a bit taken aback by this, due to the fact that all of these girls were really nice to me when we hung around each other at school, and often went out of their way to compliment me or walk with me to class. I eventually shrugged it off and told myself that I wasn't entitled to their time, and that Kate and Danny were allowed to have fun with different people without me. No big deal, right? Wrong. Towards the end of the year, my oldest friend, Kate, starts hosting bi-monthly sleepovers at her house with all of the girls in the friend group, except for me. Not going to lie, being the only one left out was really painful. I mean, I would have understood if one of the popular girls had hosted these get-togethers and decided against extending an invite to me, but Kate was one of my best friends. When I asked her why I wasn't invited, she explained that she didn't think I would be, quote, a good fit for these types of events and that she didn't think they'd be my sort of thing. But she assured me that it was no big deal and not to read into it. Despite her reassurances, I was devastated. I hated being literally the only girl in our group that wasn't included, and it hurt that I didn't really understand why. I wanted to push it out of my brain, move on, and pretend like it wasn't happening, but every other Saturday, I was bombarded with endless videos and pictures on social media of these girls having a blast at Kate's house without me. To make matters worse, other people began noticing that I was the sole girl in the group continuously left out of these regularly scheduled activities. When my friend Derek finally asked me about it, I told him that Kate didn't want me there. Seeing how noticeably sad explaining everything made me, Derek decided to invite me to Guys Paintball Night, which was scheduled on the same Saturday as the next upcoming girls' sleepover. Typically, these paintball games were a no girls allowed type of thing, but he thought the other guys would make an exception for me because I had previously played a lot of paintball with my older brothers. He told me that if Kate didn't think girly activity suited me, maybe bro bonding outings might be a better fit. Even though it was an insanely kind gesture, I knew he only invited me out of pity, so I thanked him and told him I'd think about it, while in my head thought of ways to politely decline his offer at a later date. Saturday morning rolls around, and I apologetically text Derek that I couldn't make it to the guys' paintball game that evening because I couldn't get my car to start, an obviously made-up excuse. Much to my surprise, a few hours later, Derek shows up at my house with a van full of his new guy friends to pick me up because he didn't want my imaginary car problems to keep me from having a fun time hanging with the boys. Having run out of excuses as to why I couldn't go, I ultimately caved and jumped into the crowded car. Initially, I thought I'd feel uncomfortable being the only girl in attendance, but I ended up having a really good time and was invited to play with them again the following Saturday. At school the following week, word got around that I had been invited to Guys Night. I overheard many of the girls complaining that they had never been allowed to go before, and that it wasn't fair that they had made an exception for me. Stirring the pot, Derek told them that while he'd love for them to attend, unfortunately the boys' weekly paintball games always fell on the same date/time as Kate's slumber parties. When Kate suggested she move the sleepovers to Fridays so that the girls could do both, Derek snarkily responded that he didn't think it was a good idea because paintball wouldn't be a good fit for the girls and wasn't her type of thing. The next day, Kate came to me and asked me if I'd like to attend her sleepover that Friday and then go to the paintball game with her and the other girls on Saturday. Deep down, I knew she had ulterior motives for inviting me, but honestly, I was just so happy to finally be welcomed to join her elite girl gang that I overlooked her obvious insincerity. At first, I had a blast at the sleepover. We watched movies, ate junk food, played dumb games, did each other's makeup, etc. Towards the end of the night, Kate suggests that we take a dip in the pool, but I tell her that I left my swimsuit at home, 5-minute drive, and that I needed to go back and grab it. I had walked downstairs and out the front door before realizing that I had left my keys and my purse back inside. Noticing that the front door had locked behind me, I walked over to the side of the house to come around through the back door. But as I approached the tall side of the gate, I overheard all of the girls talking about me whilst sitting around the backyard pool. Why'd you even invite her? Did you see her Walmart makeup? No wonder her face looks like crap. The only reason she gets invited to paintball games with the boys is because she's sleeping with half of them. Tramp, pick me. Cheap hoe, weirdo. The onslaught of cruelty had me frozen in place, unable to move or speak or run away. But it was Kate's mean girl responses to each of these insults that broke me. She told them she was only friends with me because she felt sorry for me, and even went as far as to apologize to the other girls for killing the vibe with my presence, but assured them it would be worth it when they went to the paintball game with me tomorrow. After what seemed like an eternity of listening to them bash me, they finally changed the subject, giving me an opening to grab my bag and get out of there. I didn't want them to know that I had overheard them talking crap or see how much their words hurt me. I just wanted to go back home, hide under the covers, and never come back out. I left the party without saying anything and later texted Kate that I wasn't feeling well and that I wasn't going to be able to take them to the paintball thing tomorrow. The next day, Derek called me to ask why Kate and all the other girls were blowing up his phone for the location, time, address of the paintball game when I was supposed to be the only one taking them. I told him everything. He was furious and wanted to confront them about it immediately, but I swore him to secrecy because I didn't want a bunch of drama right at the end of my senior year. He eventually agreed, but made me promise that I wouldn't just let this bullcrap go unchecked. For the next 2 weeks, I avoided everyone at school and ate lunch alone in my car. I just couldn't stomach Kate and the rest of the girls' fake niceness and friendly small talk when I had heard all of them say vile things about me. One day, Derek barges into my car, saying that he has a plan to get back at the girls. Apparently, with prom coming up, Kate, at the behest of the rest of her mean girl squad, had asked Derek to help nudge certain guys in the group towards asking the girls who had crushes on them to the upcoming senior prom, i.e. Kate wanted to go with guy A, Alice wanted to go with guy B, etc. So Derek had the ingenious plan to play puck and arrange for the wrong guys to ask the wrong girls to prom in a very public and over-the-top fashion that would prevent them from saying no, like pair Kate with guy B and Alice with guy A. Initially, I was worried that his plan might ultimately ruin prom night for the innocent boys that he planned to use as pawns in his revenge scheme, but he assured me that none of them had even been planning on attending the event, and that they probably wouldn't stay past pictures. Over the next couple of weeks during paintball games, me and Derek began nudging all the guys to ask out the wrong girl to prom. The guys were reluctant at first and didn't express much interest in going, but eventually came around after we promised to pay for the next 2 rounds of paintball and plan all of their promposals for them. After gaining the guys' consent, we set to work on orchestrating 12 of the most outrageous prom proposals that the school had ever seen. For example, one guy asked Danny over the school's morning news announcements, while another asked Katie in front of the entire football stadium during halftime. Despite both girls being asked by each other's crushes to attend the dance with them, the roaring crowd of onlookers made it impossible for them to say no. To say this caused drama amongst the girls' friend group is an understatement. They all blamed each other for seemingly seducing each other's crushes and not respecting their previously established dibs. By the time prom rolled around, hardly any of the girls were still on speaking terms with one another. Meanwhile, Derek and I smugly watched the manufactured drama unfold while sitting on the sidelines eating metaphorical popcorn. On prom night, many of the girls pre-gamed at Kate's house, which resulted in drunk screaming matches, dresses getting deliberately ruined, and even Kate's car getting keyed by the girl whose date she allegedly stole. When they finally showed up at the venue to take pictures, they were all visibly upset and disheveled from fighting one another. The guys and I ended up having a great time that night, after their dates eventually ditched them. Derek and I left early to grab pizza and revel in the success of our plan. Anyway, the point of this long story is that sometimes karma is a bench, and that bench's name is Derek. Absolutely, Derek's awesome. Mean girl energy should never be tolerated, even like in the teenage years in high school. That's just, the way that they treated OP here is just not okay. So for them to kind of get a comeuppance and have their big night ruined, I think is inappropriate, full circle bench of karma, as they say. Also, hello, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these crazy revenge stories, it would be so cool and awesome if you left a like or comment down below if you're listening to our podcast. With that being said, our next story is My Daughter is Evil. Same daughter from yesterday's story. I told a story on here yesterday about how my daughter told her first grade teacher that she was a terrible singer and corrected her spelling, and a lot of people liked it. So here's another one. It's kind of a prequel of sorts. My daughter put a tablet as number 1 on her Christmas list when she was 4. Had to have it. Wanted it more than a pony. Reminded me daily to the point I wanted to unalive her. Anyway, it's around 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and it's a tradition in my family that each kid gets to open one present right before bedtime. Having obviously known this in advance, I knew she'd go straight for the tablet-shaped wrapping paper, so I had it charged and ready to go. I've never seen anyone look as happy as she did when she saw it. Gave me the biggest hug I've ever gotten. I would have probably been in tears if there wasn't a room full of family members around me. She was full-on bawling tears of joy. She turns it on and immediately asks me to pull up our songs. I'm darn near in tears again. I'd been singing Puff the Magic Dragon and House at Pooh Corner to her every night at bedtime since birth. I'm feeling awesome at this point. 10 seconds into Peter, Paul, and Mary singing of Puff, she pauses it and says, "Wow, now I know what it sounds like when good singers sing it. Good night, everybody." Then she hits play again and runs upstairs to bed. I'm feeling like I just got kicked in the heart. My mom's doing her best not to laugh. My dad is literally turning purple trying to hold it in, but the second my son gets going, the whole room is dying laughing. It took a minute, but eventually I was cracking up too. Long story short, December 23rd, 2013 at 10 p.m. was the last time I ever sang to my daughter. I know millions of parents sing to their kids, but I bet I'm one of the few that vividly remember the exact day and time they stopped. Thanks for reading. P.S. I'm her dad, by the way. You know, the cool thing about children is that they're not quite old enough to have learned sarcasm or to filter their thoughts yet. So when they say something, they're saying something that's probably true, but that grown adults just don't feel as apropos to say out loud. So that's pretty funny. You gotta laugh it off. She's 4 years old, but yeah, I wouldn't take it too hard. Maybe try singing to her again in 3 or 4 years. XB Alidocious, commented, "When my daughter was a baby, I would sing to her, until the night when she put her fingers on my lips saying, thus ending my singing career." Our next story is, try and get my team member fired? Get deported. I'm not sure if this is ProRevenge, so I'll let you all decide. If not, let me know and I'll move it. I will say in advance, sorry for the long one, but the backstory is relevant. Back in the early 2010s, I started working for a big internet-based company in the UK. The company was opening a new office with a new subdivision in London. When I started, there were 2 team leaders and the office manager. The 2 teams were the content team and the SEO, search engine optimization team. I was recruited to be the development team lead, that is, web development. When I was interviewed for the job, both the office manager and SEO team lead were carrying out the interview. As you do in interviews, when they asked if this or that could be done, I would respond, yes, of course, or, you know, you would get a better result doing X, Y, or Z. So I got offered the job, and for the first year there was so much going on. As well as building a team, I also had a portfolio of websites that needed to be redeveloped and redesigned. I was at this point that some red flags started to pop up. I would have the SEO team lead, we'll call him Andy, coming to me and telling me that I needed to do things the way he wanted. I would always push back and say no, and give a reason why I was doing things the way I was. Andy would get irate and would complain to the office manager about me. When the office manager would ask me about it, I would explain what had happened and why I had said no, and the office manager would leave it there because at the end of the day, I was the one with experience in web development, not Andy. This happened a few times over the first year, and I then realized that the reason that Andy was getting so irate was because he thought that I would be a yes man to him. Sorry, buddy, that's not who I am. So now that we have the backstory, let's get into what led to the revenge. Me and the team had been working hard to get 2 of the new websites completed, and I was due to show them off to the board before they went live. This company's head office was in another part of the country, and I had to leave the office in London at about lunchtime. So I arrived at the hotel that's across the road from the head office about 4 p.m. and jump on my laptop to start going through the sites to run some tests. I was testing functionality, making sure the look and feel were correct, things like that. Then it happened. We found a major bug that caused a major issue with the functionality of the website. So it's at this point that I'm going to introduce the star of our story, Johnny. Not real name, but attacked all the same, who was my senior developer. Me and Johnny working through the night, me in the hotel room and him in the London office. We finally fixed the bug, about 7 a.m. the following day. My meeting with the board was at 10 a.m., so after getting showered, fed, and over to the office, I started my day with 0 hours sleep. I go into the meeting, and the first thing that is said is the CEO asking if I was okay. I had met him a few times, and he was a really nice guy. I explained that we had found an issue with the sites yesterday, and me and Johnny had worked through the night to fix it before the meeting. Long story short, everyone was really impressed and loved the new sites. At the end of the meeting, the CEO pulled me aside and thanked me for everything and then told me to go home and get some sleep. It was about a 3-hour train ride to London and then another hour home. I thanked him and then went on my way. So, after taking my team out for a well-deserved lunch to say thank you, the office manager then organized a night out for the whole office to celebrate on the following Friday. We started off at a fancy bar, not my sort of thing, I'm a man of cheap tastes, and then everyone moves on to a small club. I go to the club for a bit, but then leave quite early in the night as I need to get a train home. I say my byes and then head home. I come into the office on Monday and there's something going on. I speak with Emma, not real name, the contents team lead. She does not know what's going on, but there are people from head office, HR, and others. Then, a few minutes later, all the team leaders are called into a meeting. We're all squished in one of the small meeting rooms. There's the office manager, 2 members of the HR team from head office, and the 3 team leaders, including myself. So, HR explains that there's been a complaint made against Johnny. A member of the SEO team, we'll call him Mark, had called Andy on the Friday saying that Johnny had been making racist comments while everyone was out at the club. Both myself and Emma were taken aback. This was not like Johnny. On a side note, I feel that I need to explain the races of people involved. This is just for context and not an attack on anyone involved. Johnny, Emma, and I are white British. Andy is African, born in Britain, I believe, and Mark is Indian, once again, I believe. So the whole day was spent with HR doing interviews with the other people that were there that night, and we then all reconvened towards the end of the day. The result of the interviews were that no one had heard anything like what Mark was saying, so it was Mark's word against Johnny's. This was not acceptable for Andy. He wanted Johnny fired and cried, "We could not have someone like that in the office." So both Emma and I looked at each other and thought it was strange that he was so insistent on firing Johnny with no evidence. Both the office manager and HR agreed, and Johnny was let off with a warning and to be aware in the future of how things he says that could be misinterpreted. Life went back to normal in the office. That is until about 2 months later. The story of what had happened had gone round the office, of about 12 people. Then, one afternoon, I was pulled aside by one of the guys on the content team, and he said that he had overheard Andy and Mark talking and thought I should know. We went into one of the meeting rooms and he laid everything out. What I heard made my blood boil, and I think had I been in a cartoon, steam would have been erupting from my ears. He told me that the racism complaint was faked, and a plan that Andy had to attack my team because I would not bend to his demands. Him and Mark were on a call outside the club. Andy was not there that night, and that's when he heard what they were doing. It later came out that their plan was to make the complaint against Johnny and get him fired, which would then lead on to Andy complaining that I was not fit to run a team if I let that sort of thing happen under my leadership. My first question was why he didn't bring this up with HR in the interviews. He said that he did, but it was his word against both Andy and Mark. I thanked him for this and went on with what I was doing. I was ticked. There was no way that I was going to let this slide, but I knew that if I was going to go after them, I needed to have everything in place beforehand. I didn't tell Johnny what I had been told and asked the guy that told me to keep it to himself for now. I didn't want Johnny to get ticked off and do something that would get him fired or worse, affect any revenge I could dish out. So I watched. I watched everything the SEO team did and didn't do. Then it happened. It was like angels had descended from heaven to deliver me the winning lottery ticket. The building we were in was a 3-story building with a main stairwell with a door on each floor to the offices. The stairwell also led to a door out to the street. At the time, I was a casual smoker and used it to get a break from the screen and clear my head if something I was working on was not going well. So I walk out of the door to the office and into the stairwell, and who's there? Mark, of all people. He's on the phone, and he goes white as a sheet when he sees me. Now, he's mid-sentence with the person on the other end of the phone, and as I'm walking past, he's forced to carry on the conversation. I overhear, and from what he's saying, I can tell that he's talking to a school or something like that. The conversation sounding like he was looking for information about applying and about a visa. I thought that was a strange call to be having, and something was fishy about it. I had my suspicions as to what was going on, but nothing concrete at this time. A few days later, I was heading back up to the head office, and by that time we had a new office manager who lived near the head office, so was based there most of the time. When I got there, I dropped my things off at the hotel and headed over to the office. I went to his desk and asked to have a quick chat. I had explained to him what I had overheard Mark talking about on the phone and said that maybe the company might like to look at his visa status. So a week went by and nothing seemed to happen. Then, bam, he stopped showing up to the office. A few days later, I got told what had happened from one of the other SEO team members. Mark had been fired with immediate effect for no longer having the correct visa to work in the UK. The company did not want to get involved in sponsoring a new visa form. I don't know why. I started asking questions around the office, random chit-chat, and I found out that Mark is from Dubai and that he was here on his wife's student visa. I don't know how that works, but it was all above board. I also found out that his wife's course had finished, and that left them with a small window of time to get a new visa. That's when it all clicked. Now, there are some doggy people in London, and everywhere else, and they would set up these fake colleges that would sign people up to get visas to live and work in the UK. At some point before or after this, saw a program on this, and normally these were set up in tiny offices that you couldn't swing a cat in, let alone be a college. They were used as postal address for the college, and they would charge a course fee to be enrolled and thus be able to apply for a student visa. So what Mark was trying to do is to get enrolled in one of these colleges so that he could stay in the UK and carry on working. I found out a few weeks later that Mark and his wife did have to leave the UK and go back to Dubai because he didn't have any money coming in to pay for his new college course. Bye, Mark! When I found out that Mark had been let go, I pulled Johnny aside and filled him in on everything. He could not believe it and was stunned that they would try to do that. I apologized to him as it was my fault that he had been targeted by them in a way to get at me. He would not accept it and said that I had gone above and beyond in defending him. Following on from this, I made it quite clear to Andy that I know what he and Mark had done, and I would not be forgetting it and to watch his back. I made sure we were not in earshot of anyone else. About 2 months later, Andy handed in his notice and left the company, never to be seen or heard from again. I've told this story to some people over the years, and I've been asked so many times if I feel guilty for what I did. I always respond the same way. I feel guilty that Johnny was wrongfully accused and targeted. I don't feel guilty about what I did to Mark. You don't mess with my friends, family, or team. As the old saying goes, karma's a boomerang, so if you're willing to throw it out, when it comes back and hits you in the face, just be ready. Omnio89 responded, "The fact that this high-level programmer and team lead repeatedly misspelled the word college, among others, makes me think that this is fake. I forgave instant instead of insistent as maybe an autocorrect error, but using collage 5 times in one paragraph is too much." Our next story is my high school bully and his yearbook photos. I went to a boarding school for a few years. One of them had a kid, Tyrell. T was kind of a jerk and annoyed a lot of people. Kid had an attitude problem, but it never really got resolved. He'd mouth off to teachers and get confrontational with students. Think he got into a few fights. T lived in the same dorm as I did, and he'd get in my face a lot. Picture a 4.5-foot, 75-pound high school student with a 5'10", 150 kid in front of him with a short fuse. He never punched me because I was very friendly with almost the entire school, and he was aware that it wouldn't work out for him in the long run. Anyway, I got my revenge when I got on the yearbook club. I blurred every single photo of his in the yearbook, with one exception, only because I missed it. Yearbooks came out, and he doesn't notice. I'm sitting in the living room area with the dorm parent, Mike, and T walks by. Mike says, "Hey T, did you see the new yearbook?" And T says, "A bit, haven't gone through the whole thing." And then Mike responds, "Looks like your picture is blurry almost every time you show up." And I say internally, "Ooh crap, shut up." And Mike says, "Hey Anon, weren't you on the yearbook club and didn't he torment you a lot this year?" And then me, eating a grin, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Good night, gentlemen. I don't feel proud of this as an adult, obviously, but as a kid who was sick of getting pushed around by people who thought they could do it to me because I was smaller than them, I needed to respond at the time. I was never going to fight him, though he really wanted me to throw the first punch. Kept yelling it at me that year. Bruise his heel, reminding him every time he wants to take a trip down memory lane of the consequences of bullying is a good life lesson for him and his future kids. He effed around and found out. I think this is basically a metaphorical form of peaceful protest. Don't answer bullying with more violence. There's subtle ways to get back at him, and you went for the ego, which is a nice place to aim for a bully. Guys, with that all being said, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.